I was the senator who proposed the amendment to C-6 in the Senate. And I just want to take a moment to explain to you why I did that. Let me begin by saying that many of the purposes and ideals that the minister set out with respect to this legislation and what it's intended to accomplish are very good ideals. They're excellent ideals, and I fully support them, and I'd like nothing better than to get this legislation passed. But as it is presently written, it takes away a very significant piece of a clause that was transferred from the Hazardous Products Act into the new C-6, the effect of which is that any inspector under C-6 can now enter the home of any Canadian to check for compliance or to prevent non-compliance with the Act. So if a Canadian consumer purchases a product, brings it to his or her home, and an inspector wants to check it for labeling, because this Act is about labeling among other things, that inspector can get a warrant, and contrary to what the minister just said, a court does not issue that warrant. In the Act, the inspector goes to a justice of the peace, and all he has to demonstrate to a justice of the peace is that he has concerns that a product in a family home either doesn't comply with the Act or he has a way of preventing non-compliance. That is rather outrageous, and it is also quite unconstitutional. It contradicts Section 8 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to begin with. So my problem now is twofold. The nefarious people who are trying to hide behind homes by having businesses in their homes, that's what this Act was intended to get at. Those people now have a piece of unconstitutional legislation allowing inspectors to go after them. Well, that's not going to work. And in fact, it's counterproductive to put a piece of legislation in place that does not get at the people that we want to, as Canadians, to get at, who are producing harmful products. Harmful products for our children and harmful products for our society in general. So the twofold problem now is the entry into our homes and the loophole created by an unconstitutional piece of legislation that would allow these people, if in fact such a warrant ever issued, to be able to challenge it and in all likelihood walk away. Are there any questions?
I read the testimony of, I think it was Madame Lebel, the Department of Justice lawyer who testified alongside Paul Glover, who made perfectly clear this bill had been cleared for charter challenges and it was perfectly constitutional, and that had been signed off by government lawyers. You don't find their evidence compelling? Absolutely not. The Act says, and I'll read it for you, the Act says clearly under Section 20, I won't read it, it says that if you have a product stored in your home, the old Act said stored for sale, which meant basically that you had to have some nexus with the commerce of that product, which was fine, which was fair. But taking out for sale, all of us store consumer products in our homes, and now we have inspectors who have the authority, the way this is written, to come into our homes to check for compliance or non-compliance with the Act. That wasn't the intent of this legislation. It's poorly drafted, it's poorly worded, and it's unconstitutional.
Senator, we've just been told that there's about only 60 inspectors in Canada. So isn't that a moot point to think that these 60 inspectors will just have fun, try to enter your home just because you bought one toy at Toys R Us? Are we not making a...
Well, let me make this point. This is Canada. Our homes are an oasis of privacy. And if one inspector comes into one home, that's one too many, in my view. We want to get this legislation right. We want to get it aimed at the people whose conduct we want to curb and stop. And as it's presently written, it does not do that. And it can be fixed.
Do you support Mr. Banks' amendment?
I'm not really familiar with Tommy's amendments right now. I'd have to go back and review them. I've spent so much time over the last few days just dealing with this particular one. I apologize. I'd have to go back and review it.
On the question of the votes, the Liberals do have the votes. They also had the votes last week to approve Mr. Day's amendments, but 5 or 6 did not show up. Are you worried that there's some political work happening here, that even though enough senators actually believe in your amendments and Mr. Banks' amendments, they just will actually make sure the Liberals don't have the numbers in the next 1 or 2 days to make sure they actually fail?
Of course, I'm concerned about that, but am I worried about it? No. All I worry about is that as a parliamentarian in the Senate of Canada, I do my job. I see a problem here, I bring it forward, and I do my best to have it changed. If it comes to pass, fine. If it doesn't, then so be it. Thank you very much.
You're concerned about it, but not worried about it. What's your concern?
No, I didn't say. I said I'm concerned about it, but I'm not worried to the extent that if it gets passed, I'd be very happy. But if it doesn't, then I'm not worried to the extent that I've done my job. I know I've done my job. Thank you very much.